Well, really interesting, isn't it? If we focus, first of all, Gloria, on that issue of trade, clearly it's been a big issue and somewhat of a blow, it must be said, to Boris Johnson. There is no real prospect, I think, of a free trade agreement with the US under the Biden presidency. As Boris Johnson himself put it, he's got a lot of fish to fry, i.e. there's a big domestic agenda here in the United States to bounce back from the pandemic and infrastructure programme, along with the melee of all the other issues. And frankly, trying to do trade talks with anyone, let alone Britain, really is just not on the agenda. I think also these reports that we saw emerge overnight of kind of this possible free trade kind of relationship with Mexico, Canada in the US is, I think, a bit of flight flying in the sense that I don't think there's anything really substantial to it. I'm not entirely sure that there's been any preparatory talks or real understanding that this is something that Britain could get involved in. I think it was an attempt to kind of, as I say, let that fly high and see where the wind blows and see what the reaction is rather than anything substantial. Now, Boris Johnson, though, has been speaking at the Capitol building here in Washington this morning, where he's been meeting people like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and others, the congressional leaders there. And he's been talking about trades. And his suggestion is that while, yes, a free trade agreement with America is a little bit down the track, that they are still making progress, he would argue, when it comes to things like the imports of British beef, about lowering tariffs on whiskey and aviation. And this morning, he's announced that British lamb will yet again be allowed to be imported into the United States for the first time in decades. So Americans will be able to chomp on some lamb burgers as they go into the fall here in America. So his argument is that, yes, okay, a comprehensive free trade deal, really important, of course, for Britain, much talked about before Brexit, is not going to happen anytime soon, but they are kind of niggling away at the sides when it comes to specific issues.
I mean, the US is about a fifth of British trade, Darren. Trade deal or no trade deal, it remains our biggest single country trading partner, of course. I'm sure that process of trade negotiation will be tortured. Lots of linkages to what's going on in Northern Ireland. President Biden's obviously very interested in that, given the power of the Irish lobby stateside. I wanted to ask you about the Harry Dunn case, the poor British lad who was knocked off his motorbike by allegedly the wife of a US diplomat. There seems to have been some resolution, some kind of breakthrough in that really difficult situation.
Yeah, so this is, as you say, a terrible situation and caused, it must be said, a bit of diplomatic tension, I think, between the UK and the US in trying to bring justice, really, to Harry Dunn's family. There is a big question over how much Ansa Koulis, the woman involved in this, has got diplomatic immunity. She, of course, was living in the UK at the time. Now, there are suggestions that they are making progress towards that she may well be tried or kind of come up against kind of the British justice system to some degree. President Biden was asked about this yesterday, wasn't he, in the Oval Office, and he said that he would personally follow up on it. We think the Prime Minister did bring up that issue in that meeting. Now, it was a 90-minute meeting that took place between the two leaders. We think they privately spoke for some time before the proper bilat got underway. And it is, again, interesting that, of course, these two men, as always with a British Prime Minister and a US President, the relationship's really, really important. But they physically haven't seen very much of each other, really, because of the pandemic. They met in Cornwall. This was the second time. And the ability to have that kind of individual connection to properly build a relationship with someone is really important, and to raise issues like the Harry Dunn case as well. Again, that depends on your personal relationship with your counterparts. But the meeting, as I say, went on for 90 minutes. Downing Street very keen to emphasise that it was incredibly warm, that that these two men do get along, that they are friendly. We know they keep talking about trains, for example, but that this is also a relationship that is a work in progress. They're going to be in politics at leadership level, at least for the next couple of years. And that, frankly, they're going to have to kind of keep working at that relationship to build it up, as any US President and British Prime Minister has to do.
Darren, when do we get our Prime Minister back home, and what is he doing till then?
So just let me mention two other issues first, Gloria, if I can. First of all, the spat with France, clearly caused by this deal, the military deal for nuclear power submarines between Australia, the UK and the US. Obviously, President Macron not very happy. France recalling its ambassador for the first time from both Canberra and from Washington. Now, essentially, Boris Johnson has been speaking to the media this morning, in which he's kind of saying, kind of calm down, give us a break. It is kind of not that big a deal, in that we are doing something to help out the Australians, but you should not feel excluded, in a Boris attempt to try and smooth over relations, which are pretty difficult, it must be said, clearly, with France. Another issue that has kind of cropped up, and I must say it follows on from my interview with the Prime Minister yesterday, in which I asked them about what should happen with the vaccines of Strictly Come Dancing stars, some of which who seem to be refusing taking the vaccine. Yesterday, of course, he told me that everyone should take the vaccine. He wasn't going to lecture or hector anyone, but everyone should. He's repeated those calls again this morning in answers to another reporter about whether those Strictly stars should be taking the vaccines, not to disrupt, of course, one of Britain's most popular programmes. What he's doing here in Washington is, as I say, he's been meeting with congressional leaders. They are still ongoing in the Capitol building. He's then going to go to Arlington Cemetery and lay a wreath. Arlington Cemetery, of course, is where America's fallen in many of the great wars they fought in are buried. Then he's going to get back on the train this afternoon and head back up to New York. And later on tonight, in the wee small hours in the UK, he's going to deliver his address to the UN General Assembly. Unsurprisingly, his big talking point is going to be about climate change and what he thinks Britain needs to achieve at COP26, that really crucial climate change summit that's taking place in Glasgow in November. Again, Downing Street would say that they're pretty pleased that America is doubling their contribution to that $100 billion fund they're trying to open up. But be in no doubt, this is going to be a pretty difficult task, and it's going to be the focus of the government. And I know there's lots of domestic issues around soaring gas prices and others, but the UK government is going to have to be massively focused for the next 40 days on that summit in Glasgow, a really key moment for Boris Johnson, and it must be said, for Britain itself.